sure that the rest of an increasingly chaotic world would just butt out. They'd dig a hole and pull it in after them if they could. The North Sea is Europe's only significant remaining production zone, with the vast bulk of the output lying in the sea's Norwegian sector. The Norwegians enjoy excellent relations with their cultural cousins in Sweden, Finland, and Denmark, as well as their primary maritime neighbor, the United Kingdom. To be perfectly blunt, this entire roster of countries is likely to find themselves on opposite sides of the table from both the French and Germans moving forward, and they are already on the opposite sides of barbed wire from the Russians. In order to preserve themselves, this collective is all but certain to take joint action to prevent North Sea energy from going anywhere except to the members of their group. That's great if you're in the club. Less so if you're not. Algeria has been a major producer for decades, and its output has helped mitigate some of the pricing chaos the Persian Gulf so reliably creates. That's not going to happen for much longer. In the post-order world, there will be exceedingly few countries that can look out for their own economic and security needs. And the country at the top of that very short list is France, which sits directly across the Mediterranean from Algeria. France was Algeria's former colonial master, and the breakup was rough. The best Algerian move will likely be to approach either Spain or Italy and offer them supplies so Algiers won't have to deal with the French. It might even work. Barring that, the Algerians can look forward to the French gobbling up their entire energy export capacity. At least the French will pay for it. Probably. Libya will get messier because it is, well, Libya. Home to at least 3 major insurrections, in the middle of an ongoing civil war, it is a place my gut tells me to simply write off completely. But then there's Italy. In a world in which former Soviet and Persian Gulf crude becomes constricted and France de facto takes over Algerian fields, Libya becomes Italy's only source of oil. Unless the Italians choose to give up on their country's existence, they will have no choice but to venture forth to secure Libya's major ports, Libya's production sites deep in the desert, and all the connecting infrastructure in between. Considering Italy's trademark disorganization, general out-of-practiceness when it comes to colonial occupations, and flat-out racism when it comes to Arabs, this little chapterette of history is certain to be entertaining and horrifying. So, how much is left? Factor out captive supplies in places like North America, the North Sea, North Africa, or Southeast Asia, and eminently disruptible supplies from the Persian Gulf and former Soviet space. Then put supplies for local demand in places like North America and Russia into a different bucket. And total, exportable, kinda sorta reliable supplies globally only amount to a paltry 6 million barrels per day, versus a global demand of 97 million. There is more to oil than oil. No one simply puts raw oil in their tank. It must first be processed at a refinery. The supply chains of oil may not be nearly as complicated as they are for, say, computers, but the outcomes can be far more dramatic. No 2 crude oil streams have exactly the same chemical makeup. Some are gooey and laden with impurities, most commonly sulfur, which can make up to 3% of the crude oil by volume. Such crudes are called heavy sours. Some, like Canada's oil sands, are so heavy that they are solid at room temperature. Others are so pure they have the color and consistency of nail polish remover and are called light sweets. Between these extremes lies an entire world full of other possibilities, each with its own specific chemical makeup. Each of the world's hundreds of refineries has a preferred input blend, which in the case of many older refineries was tailored to a specific oil field. This too is an outcome of the order. In a safe world, there was nothing stopping crude from any particular source from reaching any particular processor. But post-order? Anything that scrambles upstream production patterns or midstream transport patterns also scrambles everything in the energy sector's refinery downstream. Running the wrong crude in the worst case can cause major damage to multi-billion-dollar facilities. Even in the best case, it is certain to trigger something called run loss, a not-so-fancy term that means exactly what it suggests. A certain percentage of the crude run through a refinery for processing is simply lost due to inappropriate input mixes. Run loss increases quickly when either a refinery is asked to do something that was not designed to do, or when it lacks access to the correct crude oil blend. The Europeans, for example, love diesel, and Russia's Urals blend, a medium sour crude, is pretty good feedstock for refining diesel. Interrupt Urals flows, replace Urals with a different crude grade, and the Europeans are going to face serious product bottlenecks even if they can somehow keep their refineries running at their designed capacity. Considering oil's price inelasticity issue, something as little as a 1% refinery loss can have massive impacts on customers. We're looking at a lot more than a 1% run loss moving forward. Most of the world's refineries were designed to run on lighter, sweeter crudes because they have fewer contaminants and so are easier to process. Today, most of the world's lighter, sweeter crudes come from American shale plays. Refurbishing refineries can be done, but it takes two things the new world will have in short supply: time and money. Besides, most retooling simply locks you into a new crude formula. In an unstable world, reliability of specific crude input streams can occur only if you are very close to the secure source. For most refineries, that's simply not a possibility. There's even more to oil than oil. There's also something called natural gas, which along with oil is one of the classic fossil fuels. In many ways, the two are similar. Both have the same three concentrations of supply: the Persian Gulf, the former Soviet Union, and North America. Both have the same three concentrations of demand: Northeast Asia, Europe, and North America. Both can be used for similar things, ranging from a transport fuel to a petrochemical feedstock. They do, however, have a critical difference that shapes their use, their prevalence, and their impact. Oil is a liquid. It can be moved by pipe or barge or tanker or truck and can be stored in a non-pressurized tank. Large oil tanks at major ports even have floating lids that rise and fall with the fill level. There's no way you are doing that with natural gas. It is a gas. Gases are difficult to contain and transport. And even if the gas itself is not flammable, and natural gas most assuredly is flammable, they tend to be explosive under pressure. This difference has a few direct outcomes. Because gases burn far more thoroughly than liquids, natural gas is one of the world's premier electricity generation fuels, while hardly anyone uses oil for direct power generation any longer.